Today I'd like to make a video on the differences on some of these action cameras. The GoPros, unfortunately, I will not be able to put into the video because my Hero 3 finally died this last season. The O-ring slipped off and I was already on a dive and the camera flooded. I took it to 120 feet and that's the end of this camera. The GoPro Hero 4 Black never worked for me properly. Every time I would take it past 90 feet, it would just shut off. Now it only shows Hero 4 in the front screen here, and it won't do anything. I don't know what's wrong with it, but it doesn't work. So, towards the end of the season, both my GoPros died, and I had to get a camera to record some shipwrecks. So I went in a pinch and got this DB Power EX5000. It's a $50 action camera, and I just wanted to get some footage of the shipwrecks. So I took this season, and then towards the end of the season I bought the Sony FDR-X3000, and this camera is now my new action camera to use, my go-to action camera. So I'm just going to set these GoPros aside because they are no longer use to me, and this isn't going to be a GoPro review. They're both dead. I'm done with GoPro. I'm moving on to different things. The Sony FDR-X3000, like I said, is going to be my new go-to camera. It's got optical image stabilization, which is huge. The picture quality with the Zeiss lens is so much better than the GoPro cameras, and it's cheaper than the GoPros now. So this is the new camera. This is going to be my backup camera if I need, in a pinch, to get some video. This isn't really professional quality video, but I can at least get some inventory on shipwrecks, and I'll still be able to see what I'm looking at. $50, $370. Again, this is on sale right now because it's near Christmas. It's $350 right now. That comes with the waterproof housing, which is depth rated to 200 feet. This housing is depth rated, I believe, to 33 feet, although I have taken it down to 100 feet and it performs fine. In this video, I'm going to compare the footage of the Sony FDR-X3000 with the DB Power EX5000. I'm using this contraption which I built several years ago. I mount the Sony on the top and the EX5000 on the bottom, so the videos aren't going to line up perfectly, but you'll get the idea. So we have the DB Power EX5000 in the upper left hand corner, the Sony FDR-X3000 in the bottom right. Right away you can see the difference in the saturation. Both of these are straight out of the camera. The upper left, the DB Power, is 1080p 30 frames per second because that's the highest quality that it will give. The bottom right, the Sony FDR-X3000, is 1080p 60 frames per second. The Sony is capable of shooting in 4K, but today we're just going to use the 1080p for this video demonstration. I apologize, I forgot to turn off the date and time on the camera settings, so that in the bottom left hand corner, the DB Power, it's a little irritating, but it's there. I've turned it off now, but for this video it's going to be there. This is the audio taken from the DB Power. Both of these cameras have housings on them, and the audio is basically non-existent on both. Certainly not usable for either of them, other than to have just a background breathing noise while scuba diving. The out of the camera footage is pretty good on both. On the DB Power, you can see it's a bit saturated. It seems like there's a bit of a red tint to it, and the darks are pretty dark. You can see that it would be very difficult to color correct this in post-processing. The footage coming from the Sony seems to have more of a neutral tone to it, which would be better for post-processing and color grading, especially for this underwater footage. You could really touch that up and make it look more realistic. So these aren't optimal conditions for either of these cameras. This dive is done on December 3rd, 2017 in 39-degree water temperature at about 15 foot in depth with about 10 foot visibility. So sediment and particulates in the water are really going to distort some of the image quality, whereas typically we're diving deeper depths in clear water. So this is just a good way to show what these cameras are capable of doing. In my opinion, the video quality of the DB Power is fine for doing inventory or for having a personal video done for a dive or whatever you're using it for. It's not something I would use professionally, but it's fine for a $50 camera. I think it performs very well. The Sony has the upper hand with image quality and post-processing capabilities, but it's also another $300 more than the DB Power. Also, I'd like to mention that the battery power on both these cameras exceeds that of the GoPro. The DB Power and the Sony both went to 1 hour and 20 minutes. The Sony had 2 bars left. The DB Power had 1 bar left. On the GoPro, I would rarely get more than 45 minutes of footage, especially in colder temperatures. They just wouldn't last for more than usually a half hour if I was diving in colder temperatures. So I'm very happy with both the batteries on these cameras. This handheld shot really shows the difference in the optical image stabilization that the Sony has compared to the DB Power. You can see that the image stabilization on the bottom right is much smoother, almost looks like it's on a gimbal, whereas the upper left is more shaky, and you can tell you're walking with the camera and it's not nearly as smooth. The shadows on the DB Power seem to be so much darker than that on the Sony. If you look underneath the soffit above the Rum Runner sign, you'll see a big difference in the lightness of the image. So that's it for this video. I hope you learned something and got some insight into the differences in these action cameras. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time.